I have never really good at studying since I was a kid. Honestly, I didn't like it. I always wondered, why on earth do I have to study? What made things tough for me was my brother, who was 5 years older. He was super smart.
Try to work hard and learn like your big bro.
Yeah, got it, I said with enthusiasm. At first, I was determined to match two with my brother, but that motivation only lasted until the beginning of second grade. When summer break ended, I just couldn't grasp the lessons. While most of my classmates confidently raised their hands, I was mostly clenched tight. In class, the rule was that if you were confident, you'd raise an open hand, and if not, you keep it clenched. So, it means I hardly knew any answers. I tried raising an open hand once in a while, but I rarely got it right. Eventually, I found studying dull and stopped raising my hand altogether. One reason I grew to dislike studying was being compared to my brother.
Why can't you be good at studying like your big bro?
Every time my test scores weren't up to par, my mom would say that with a disappointed look. Even when I did better than expected, she never gave me any praise. That's because she always measured me against my brother. I think, in her eyes, I was always coming up short. The one silver lining was that my dad never chimed in about my studies.
As long as you don't bother others, it's okay not to be smart. You can still make a living. I'm a prime example of that.
My father would say with a chuckle when I confided in him about how I hated being compared to my brother. My dad was a construction site supervisor. In his 8th grade, although he was terrible in academics, his shop class teacher noticed he was good with his hands. The teacher introduced him to his friend, and from the time he finished middle school, he's been dedicated to that line of work.
When I was young, I hated sitting down and listening to lessons. Got scolded by teachers a lot.
My dad would tell me, "So, I guess I got my lack of smarts from you, huh?" I joked. My dad responded with,
I guess so.
and burst into laughter. A significant turning point in my life came when I was in 8th grade. My deeply admired father passed away. It happened suddenly. He was working on site when some materials fell on him. They rushed him to the hospital in an ambulance. Despite an emergency surgery, it seems the injury was just too severe.
We did all we could.
It was what the surgeon told our family when he came out of the operating room. When we returned home after my dad's funeral, my brother walked into my room.
I wish I had more time to share man-to-man talks with Dad.
My brother murmured, sitting beside me. I knew there was more to my strained relationship with Mom. My brother was in college then. He attended a state university in another state and lived alone in an apartment. Ever since I hit middle school and my brother left home, conversations with my mom dwindled to almost nothing. It felt like she was avoiding me. With my brother gone, it was my dad who held the family bond intact. When he passed away, my brother seemed worried about the deteriorating relationship between Mom and me. And a few months later, those worries became reality.
His brother had good grades and chose his own path. This one, though, he's different. I'm at my wit's end with him.
It was during the end-of-year career guidance in 8th grade when the teacher pointed out that I had yet to decide on further studies. That's when my mom confronted me about my plans. "You haven't cared about me, so don't act like a nice mom." I couldn't help but shout out in frustration. Feeling awkward after the confrontation, I stormed out of the house. I crashed at a friend's place that night, and from then on, I'd wander around late into the evening. Some of the pals I hung out with at night were the type others would keep their distance from. One evening, as a few friends and I were chatting in the park, a voice suddenly approached us.
You guys are students, right? What are you up to?
When we turned around, there stood a man dressed like a chef.
What do you want, old man? You got business with us.
One of my buddies shot back at him.
Youth's wonderful, isn't it?
The man replied without flinching.
What are you on about, old man? Buzz off.
With that, one of my buddies stood defiantly in front of the man. But the man wasn't fazed at all. My friend got upset and tried to punch the guy, but he easily dodged. This went on for a while, and eventually, my friend wore himself out. Watching my winded friend, the man remarked,
You're so out of shape that even an old guy like me can nod you. Maybe use that energy for something worthwhile, huh?
Man, this is annoying. Let's go, guys.
Another one of my friends said, and we began to leave. Just then, the man called out my name.
Hey, Lucas, what are you up to? Your dad would be heartbroken.
Hearing the man say my name, I was stunned and froze in place. The man continued.
Do you have any goals? If not, come by my place tomorrow.
He then pointed to his left chest where Thompson's Pizza was written. I remembered that pizzeria. It was the place my dad used to take me to from time to time. Curious about the man's words, I visited the pizzeria the following evening. When I entered, a woman shouted,
Boss,
Soon after, the man from the previous day emerged from the back.
Oh, you showed up. Have some pizza.
But I don't have any money.
Don't you worry about that. It's on me today. Go on, eat up.
The boss treated me to a pizza. Since my dad passed away and I started wandering the streets at night, I hadn't had a proper meal. Maybe because of that, the pizza I had at that moment tasted better than anything I'd ever eaten before. It reminded me of my dad, evoking a sense of nostalgia.
When you're eating, you look just like Aiden.
The boss said while looking at me. Hearing my father's name unexpectedly, I choked on my pizza in surprise. I hurriedly washed it down with some soda. When I looked at him, he was giving me a kind smile. From our conversation that followed, I found out that the boss and my dad had been best buddies since middle school. They'd even gotten into trouble together back in the day.
Well, it's all water under the bridge now.
He said, laughing heartily. The boss's smile reminded me so much of my father's. Then he turned to me and said,
How about it? If you've got nothing going on, why not come work here? I'll whip you into shape.
Please, I answered immediately. The day after my middle school graduation, I began working and living at the boss's restaurant. I told my mom only that I'm working. I didn't go into the specifics. I didn't believe she'd accept whatever I explained anyway. The boss's place was a small pizzeria that would be packed with just 20 people. There were no other employees. I was the first person the boss had ever hired.
Are you serious about this? If you're committed, I'll teach you everything I know.
That's what the boss told me on the first day. I was so glad. It felt good to have someone genuinely engage with me. Cleaning before opening and after closing, dishwashing, deliveries for the first 2 years, it was all grunt work. But I never felt bothered by it. That's probably because his affection was transmitted from all the words and deeds. The boss finally let me accompany him to the supermarket 3 years into the job. From then on, I learned the tricks of picking out ingredients from him at the store every day. However, it was another 7 years before I actually began making pizzas. Gradually, I started to be trusted with making the pizzas. One day, the boss's expression turned grim. What's going on? According to the boss, big pizza chain stores were popping up nearby, causing a significant drop in our sales. Actually, I had been feeling a decline in the number of customers and delivery requests lately. In the midst of this downturn, the boss suddenly collapsed. He had suffered a stroke.
don't expect him to return to his previous state. Cooking will likely be out of the question.
That's what the doctor told us. I heard this reality from the boss's wife. In front of the boss, both his wife and I tried our best to stay cheerful, but it seemed the boss fully understood his condition.
I'm leaving the shop in your hands.
One day, he said that to me in his hospital room. The boss looked peaceful. He and his wife didn't have any children. Seeing my dedication to the job, it seemed the boss had decided to entrust me with the restaurant.
I've taught you everything I know, so I can leave it to you with confidence.
The boss told me that. However, the reality wasn't so easy. The fans of Thompson's Pizza were also fans of the boss himself. Many fans drifted away with the change in the artisan behind the pizzas. Few months went by, and the customers didn't return. Running the shop became a struggle.
It's not your fault, Lucas.
The boss's wife told me that, but I felt frustrated by my helplessness. I couldn't figure out any solid solution, and time slipped away. It was almost a year since the boss had collapsed, but the reality was even harsher. I fell behind on loan repayments, and about 6 months ago, a financial institution reached out, prompting me to restructure the repayment plan. But it seemed inevitable. They were pushing to shut down the shop. I was filled with regret, especially towards the boss and his wife, but faced with this hopeless situation.
It can't be helped. It's just the way of the times.
Both the boss and his wife seemed to accept it. 2 days after I had decided to close the pizza shop, a young boy suddenly showed up with an astonishing proposal.
Excuse me, can I rent out this place for a day? I'll pay you $10,000.
He wanted to host a get-together for some acquaintances at the shop, but this boy looked no older than a 5th or 6th grader. With a serious expression, he took out a wad of cash amounting to $10,000 from his bag and handed it to me. A kid hosting a get-together. And haven't I seen this kid somewhere before? It was certainly an odd sight, but I was drowning in despair over being unable to save the boss's shop. Anyway, the shop's going to close. Let's end the boss's cherished place with a full house on a high note. That's what I thought, and I responded to the boy. All right, but charging $10,000 for a day is a bit much. I'm closing the shop anyway, so you can have it for free. The boy's eyes widened in surprise. And on the morning of the promised day with that boy, I bought a large amount of ingredients, the most I had in a long time. Tears streamed down my face as I began preparing everything from the early hours. I was reminded of just how much I love being a pizza maker. As the evening came, the shop's door swung open. The boy showed up at first, but the next customer who walked in made me freeze in shock. It was my brother. How many years had it been since we last met? Since I started living and working at the shop, I hadn't been in touch with my family at all. I got my first cell phone when I received my first paycheck, and I hadn't shared my contact with my family. I hadn't given my number to my brother either. Though I loved my brother, I wanted to sever ties with my mom. So I thought it was best to cut off contact completely. Yet, here he was, standing right in front of me.
This is a fantastic place.
My brother said with a smile that hadn't changed over the years.
Let me introduce you. This is my wife and my eldest son, Jackson. And these are the employees for my company and their families. Well, it's just a small company with only 3 employees.
He added with a chuckle. My brother's wife gave a slight nod, but Jackson said,
Hey, Lucas, long time no see.
With a mischievous grin on his face. I had no idea my brother was married or had a child. Yet, that smile of Jackson's was the spitting image of my brother from the old days. I thought I've seen you, I said, comparing Jackson and my brother. Without saying much, my brother simply replied,
Yeah, that's just me.
You don't usually call your dad an acquaintance, I remarked to Jackson.
But it's less fun to be direct, you know. Besides, whether he's my dad or an acquaintance, it's all the same to me.
Jackson bragged with a proud smile. Then another customer entered. Seeing this guest left me even more stunned than seeing my brother. It was my mom. She didn't say a word. Perhaps she was at a loss for words. I was also unsure what to say, so I just averted my gaze. The party went on smoothly, and everyone complimented the pizza I made. Once we wrapped up eating, I posed a question to my brother that had been bugging me. How do you know I was working here? I asked. According to him, soon after I started working at the boss's place, the boss reached out to my mom. Naturally, my brother got the news from her as well, but the reason he hadn't visited the restaurant was due to something the boss told my mom.
Lucas is trying to stand on his own 2 feet. So, until he comes to tell you with confidence, please just watch over him quietly.
Learning that the boss cared so much about me brought tears to my eyes. Yet, the reality of closing down the shop I took over from him made me deeply regretful. Then, my brother made a suggestion.
How about letting me give some business advice for this place?
It turns out, after college, he'd worked in a major bank for 15 years and then, 3 years ago, started his consulting firm with his capital.
The taste is spot on. I'm confident we can turn this around,
he declared confidently. But I don't have the money, I said. Responding to my concern, my brother reassured me.
Don't worry about the finances. My company will cover the investment. And, of course, I'll personally talk to the financial institutions you're working with. Since the repayments are a sure thing, they shouldn't make any fuss.
We decided to discuss the revitalization plan in detail later on. As the party was winding down, my brother called our mom over.
I'm so sorry.
It was out of the blue. My mom deeply bowed her head to me. I was stunned, but then she began to speak.
Back then, I wasn't in my right mind. I pushed you, ignoring your unique strengths, thinking you should excel academically like your brother. I've always wanted to apologize, but I couldn't. I'm truly, truly sorry.
Seeing my mom, a bit skinnier than before, with traces of gray hair, bone deeply, choked me up, and tears welled in my eyes.
Mom's been waiting for you to come home all this time,
My brother explained.
but she felt that she might get in the way of what you wanted to do if she said anything. She thought it was best not to attend tonight, but I convinced her to come.
Mom, I'm the one who should be saying, I'm sorry. It felt like a weight was lifted off my chest. Despite the detours, I felt we could start afresh as a family. I considered going home after such a long time. And I thought, thanks to my brother's help, we could rebuild this restaurant and serve delicious pizza again to our mom.